So, as promised, this is a little video walkthrough of the main teaching points that we covered in the session yesterday. You can use this to remind yourself of some of the things we talked about. I've also included with this email the PDFs of the two cards that we looked at from the Storyteller Tactics deck. That's the Movie Time Story Tactic and the Man in a Hole Story Arc. You're very welcome to share this video and those PDFs with your colleagues as well, if you think that would be useful for them. Okay, so we did spend a little bit of time looking at your websites because that's a kind of visual record of the kind of stories that you currently tell about your work. And obviously I picked out some good bits, some bad bits. But I also said, and I think this is true, that the stories on your website are probably about 10% of the valuable stories that you tell. The most important kind of story I think that you can have is a story of a customer like me. So if I'm a landlord thinking of letting with you, or I'm a homeowner thinking of selling with you, I need to see stories of someone like me who you've already helped. Now, clearly I might see them on your website. I should see them on your website. But I'll probably only, even with the best, fullest website ever, you're going to include 1, 2, maybe 3 customer stories. So, okay, you've got 2 or 3 customer stories on your website. You should have hundreds in your back pocket ready to go, ready to dip into when you need them. Because the most powerful form of story is the story of someone like you, where you is the customer you're talking to. So part of what you're doing when you meet a customer, when you talk to a customer on the phone or in their home, part of what you're doing is going, okay, I need to figure out where you are. Okay, what it is you're trying to do, what's driving you, what's motivating you. So, for example, there's a 55-year-old woman who's your target customer who has inherited a house because her dad's passed away. Okay, what you're looking for is a story of someone like you who you've already helped. So, yeah, well, listen, this reminds me of a time. A couple of years ago, we dealt with a client in a very similar situation to you. Her dad had just passed away and left a house that was... You get the idea. You're locating the target customer, by using, looking what they're doing, listening to them. You locate your target customer, and then you want to reach into your pocket and pull out a story of somebody similar to them. And that's the most powerful form of kind of social proof. Look, the most powerful was your twin brother. I helped him sell a house last year. Now, that'd be really powerful social proof, but you're not going to get it. Someone like you, someone in a similar situation to you, I helped that person, or one of my colleagues helped that person. We understand what you need. And that connection comes across with story. It doesn't come across with your facts about what an award-winning estate agency you are, and it doesn't come across in your opinions. Okay, it comes across in stories. Okay, so what does the story need to have? Because it's got to go beyond just facts and opinions. Right, well, the trick I showed you was this idea of framing things like a movie director. So you've got your camera, and what you can see in the viewfinder of the camera, that's the story. So a story is framed, and it's something happening in a place with people, and it's a single moment of time. So it's not we've helped thousands of customers. That's not a story, because thousands of customers, you can't get them in a frame. You can say we've helped thousands of customers, and then 2 magic words, for example, and then you drop down from thousands of customers, which could look like anything, we don't know. Thousands of customers is vague. For example, you drop down into one single story of one single customer dealing with one single situation. And like I said, your challenge when you're trying to build trust with somebody is to make that single story match close to where they are. Okay, so you use what I call the movie time technique. So you're thinking in the story like a movie director. So you're framing. Okay, and what could I point my camera at? Well, a woman like you, same age as you, whose father had passed away, and she's now got a house that's a complete mess and she doesn't know what to do with it. Okay, you could point your camera at that. So, what would you point your camera at? And then you get into what we call the movie time card from Storyteller Tactics. And that is, I'll put it up on the screen and I'll send it to us PDF. It basically has a prompt on the back for the ingredients a story needs to have if it's going to run like a movie in someone else's head. And the first ingredient is action, yeah? People doing stuff in a time and place. The second ingredient, interestingly, is emotion. Right. Emotion, positive or negative, sticks in people's memories. If you talk about a customer like you who felt really anxious because the house her father had left behind was a total mess and she didn't know what to do, she didn't know where to start. Okay, the anxiety is an emotion. And because we were very careful with her, we helped her with the house clearance, we did it in a very sensitive way. She was relieved at the end of it. Okay, now we've got positive emotion. Right, so that transition from negative to positive emotion, that's a really powerful story arc. Okay, so when you're thinking about your, for example, stories, okay, single moment in time, like a movie, action and emotion. And then you get to give people the third ingredient, which is the meaning. You say, I think this shows you that, yeah, we're very good at dealing with X, Y, Z. Okay, I think this shows you why we're an award-winning. Yeah, okay, you get the idea. So that's the movie time tactic. Now, the great thing about story arcs like that one, where we talked about going from a negative to a positive emotion. That's the simplest form of story arc, where you go from a bad place to a good place, or your customer actually. The customer is the hero of this story, and what's happening here is that the customer is going from a bad place here to a good place. Right? That's the journey over time, and it's going upwards. We love that story. That is kind of wish fulfillment. It's Cinderella. It's Rocky. It's a really feel good story. It's probably 90% of most business storytelling is that version where you're going, you've got a problem, come with us, we've got the solution, you'll feel better. Okay. Nothing wrong with that story. As I say, probably about 90% of business storytelling uses that pattern. In the Storyteller Tactics, in the Storyteller Tactics box, that pattern has a story arc, and it's called Rags to Riches. Nothing wrong with it, except there is a danger that if that's the only story you've got, it sounds a bit too good to be true. Right? If you've only got success stories, okay, great, but do I really believe it? It sounds a bit salesy. So the story I want you to think about, the richer story, the more nuanced story, the more realistic story is actually based on this card, which is called Man in a Hole. And the story arc on this card, which you'll see on the back, isn't about going from bad place straight to good place. It's going, right, okay, here you are. You're okay. Things are okay. You'd like things to be better, of course, who wouldn't? But it's not going to be a straight line. You're not going to go do and get there in one go. And if you did, you wouldn't tell a story about it, frankly. What's going to happen is you're going to get knocked down first, and then you're going to have to climb. So that's the hole, yeah? So the Man in a Hole story is this idea that here's the customer, the hero of your story, right? And they're doing okay, but something knocks them down. So, any person deciding they want to sell their house goes through this like, oh gosh, I reckon we'll get 400,000 for the house, and maybe we can stretch to 500,000 for the next one, and it'll be amazing. And they're thinking it'll be so easy to sell because everything's selling around here. Oh no, it won't. Right? Here's the person who lists on Purple Bricks, yeah, thinking, wow, look, I can list on Purple Bricks, and it's going to cost me like 500 quid, and I don't have to pay an estate agent. Isn't this brilliant? Right. And then, of course, once they hit a problem in the sale and they can't get anyone on the phone because they haven't got an estate agent, and they're in a call center waiting for somebody different person every time to deal with it. And so then they realize, oh, actually, right, this is a disaster. This is just not selling. This is awful. Okay, and then maybe you come along and you say, right, well, actually, you know what? There's a value in local estate agents, local knowledge. We can do all these things for you. And your job is then to lift them out of the hole to the better place. So that's a very, very powerful story. You can see now, when you understand that there are these kind of stages of the story. You start in your comfort zone. Yeah, you start in your comfort zone. There's something knocks you down. It ends up feeling awful, like a crisis. You recover and you get to a better place. That's the story of every lesson you've ever learned. That's the story of every first day on a job, or your first day at school, or it's the story of every kind of life stage you go through. You think you're okay, you'd like to be better, but it gets worse in between. Okay, so it's a very powerful story. It's very easy to tell when you know the beats of the story, and it's also why stories have a beginning, middle, and end, because they own those three beats. So that's a very, very easy story to tell. I think that you can tell a story to another customer, about a customer who's been through that story arc, that man in a hole. You can tell it about the past, yes? So in the past, this happened to this other customer. You can also tell it about the future and say, look, just imagine, you think you can save money and you decide to list on Purplebricks. Well, it'll look okay at first, but then you realise, and the but is the key thing there, but then. Okay, so you can tell that story backwards, talking about the past. You can tell the same story shape forwards, talking about what might happen in the future. Either way, the structure is the same. Okay, so those were the two main story kind of techniques that we covered. There are certain kind of story, I think, phrases that will get you out of business speak and abstract and bullshit, frankly, and into story. So you can say things like, for example. The minute you say, for example, you should be dropping down into a story. You can say to somebody, look, just imagine, which is you're taking them into a scenario, which is another word for a story. You can say to a customer, this reminds me of, right? You're dropping into a story of another customer. You can say to a colleague, look, walk me through this. How do you think this is going to play out? And by saying walk me through it, or let me walk you through a scenario, again, you're dropping out of the high-level abstract business speak, right? Bullshit. You're dropping out of that into story, because you're talking about a single moment. You're talking about people doing stuff, and that level of communication is far more understandable. We get it. We don't need help understanding stories. We do need help understanding abstract language. We don't need help understanding stories. So that's why they are so powerful. We did talk a little bit about websites, even though, as I said, I don't think that's the focus of all of your storytelling. But a couple of interesting things that came out. The first was about the use of language and what reading age your website is written for. This example here, we've got Sawyer & Co. This text here is a lot of long words. Now, if you put that text into a readability checker, which is what this website here is doing, these are free services, and ask it to score your text, well, in this case, it says this is extremely difficult, requiring a reading age of 23 or above, 18 years of above, professional level reading, college graduate 23. Okay, you get the idea. You can go to your preferred AI and you could ask it to rewrite the same copy for a reading age of 12 to 14. Now, why are you doing that? Because 12 to 14-year-olds are not selling houses. Yeah, busy people are selling houses, and busy people have not got time to read through dense technical copy to find out what it is you actually do for them. So Yeah, just do a little audit on your site and check the reading age. Okay, the other thing we pointed out was about the use of stock images. So it's important to see customers on your website, see people's faces. We read faces. It's really important to see customers. But I think we can rapidly tell if you're using photographs or video of real customers, actual people, or models, or God forbid, AI generated pictures of customers. So on the Robert Watts site here, these guys, they're just too polished. It's too professional. They're too neat, these people in this photograph, in this video. They're models. They're not real customers. By comparison, on the Robin Jackson website, we meet these people. And these guys, oops, turn the volume down. These guys are very, very obviously real people, real customers, because they're not word perfect. They're slightly off, their eye line's slightly off camera. They're looking down, the camera's shaking because they're filming on a mobile phone. Okay, these are obviously real people. Interestingly, it took a long time to get this video because you have to go to about 100 real people who were busy in order to get 5 or 6 good little bits of video. So it does take time. But here's the thing about storytelling and any form of message, any kind of message. Cheap messages carry no meaning. So if you've gone to an AI and got some images of customers, or you've gone to a stock photo library and bought images of customers, it's taken you 30 seconds to do it. This video we're watching now took, many, many hours to make. Therefore, this video is an expensive signal. It's a costly signal. Whereas the stock footage is a cheap signal. And frankly, we're surrounded by cheap signals and we ignore most of them. So as I said, I'm going to include the PDFs of the 2 story tactics that we worked on. There are many, many more in the box. If you'd like to get in touch, get a discount code for the box of Storyteller Tactics, drop me an email. Listen, drop me an email anyway if you'd like to discuss anything about the stories that we talked about in the room. And if you'd like your teams to become better storytellers, get in touch.